Canada is approaching a defining defense decision, one that goes far beyond fighter jets. It's about power, independence, and sending a clear message to Donald Trump. After months of tariffs, pressure, and challenges to Canada's sovereignty, Mark Carney is now weighing a move that could directly impact the United States by stepping away from the F-35 deal and choosing a different path.
We need the capacity because the interest and demand of the products we're talking about is quite substantial in the marketplace. So we want to sort of implement and establish a hub in Canada. So that's absolutely important. But it's also about Canadian sovereignty going forward. That is, I have got many messages from politicians in Canada and also from industry that is an important thing going forward. So, but the intention is to build in Canada, absolutely.
Canada's defense decision is no longer just about fighter jets. For years, the plan was simple: purchase the F-35 from Lockheed Martin, a move that aligned Canada with American systems, supply chains, and strategic influence. It was the default path, shaped by decades of close military ties with the United States. But that clarity is now fading. This is no longer just about performance, it's about control and dependence. Canada is beginning to question whether relying so heavily on the U.S. for such a critical part of its defense still makes sense. A major reason behind this shift is Donald Trump. Under his approach, the relationship has become more transactional and less predictable, with tariffs and pressure tactics raising concerns. When defense depends on a partner willing to apply economic leverage, that reliance starts to look like a vulnerability. That's where Mark Carney is rethinking the strategy. And this is where Saab changes the equation. Instead of simply offering another jet, Saab is presenting a different model, one where Canada becomes not just a buyer but a builder. This approach would allow Canada to take part in production, development, and long-term control of its defense systems. It shifts the country from being a customer to having real ownership. In the end, this isn't just about choosing a different aircraft, it's about redefining Canada's independence and potentially transforming its entire defense and aerospace future.
Is it your company's intention, if the Canadian government does go ahead with Saab, to manufacture both these products here in Canada?
That is absolutely our intention. We are working with industry as we speak, quite a few of them, to make sure that we have good receivers of technology, that we have infrastructure to set up manufacturing, and to create as much as possible from a supply chain perspective in Canada. So that is something that is a win-win to us.
This isn't just about purchasing jets. It's about building an entire industry. Saab is proposing a manufacturing hub in Canada, one that could generate thousands of high-paying jobs and anchor the full supply chain in the country, with estimates of around 3,500 sustained roles over time. But the bigger shift goes beyond employment. It's about control. Saab has made it clear that this proposal isn't just economic, it's strategic. At its core, it's about giving Canada greater sovereignty over its own defense systems.
We need the capacity because the interest and demand of the products we're talking about is quite substantial in the marketplace. So we want to sort of implement and establish a hub in Canada. So that's absolutely important. But it's also about Canadian sovereignty going forward. That is, I have got many messages from politicians in Canada and also from industry that is an important thing going forward. So, but the intention is to build in Canada, absolutely.
That word matters, sovereignty. Because when your fighter jets are built, maintained, and controlled by another country, your military capability is never fully your own. And that is exactly the risk Canada is now trying to eliminate. And Saab didn't stop there. They went even further.
It's about the decision to have a dual fleet. I know Canada has selected the F-35, but also complementary capability is, of course, a Gripen fighter. That would add combat mass, many hours in the air, an affordable solution. It is a very agile, multi-role type of capability. But that is, of course, and we want to do that in Canada and not having Canada so dependent on only the US, but it's not either or. And we can transfer that technology. We've done exactly this in Brazil. And we just this week rolled out the first fully fledged built fighter from the Brazilian soil from Embraer and Saab. So we have evidence of that we can do this, but there is a political decision, of course, to.
This is the heart of the story, not just stronger jets or better economics, but reducing reliance on the United States. For decades, Canada's defense strategy has been built around deep integration with the U.S., but under Donald Trump, that model is now being questioned and potentially reshaped. If Canada steps away from the F-35, it won't be seen as a routine decision. It will be understood as a signal. The F-35 isn't just a product from Lockheed Martin. It represents American influence, a key pillar of its defense industry, and a symbol of global alignment. For years, allies didn't just buy capability, they bought into a system tied closely to Washington. So if Canada, one of the closest U.S. partners, begins to move away, the impact goes far beyond a single contract. It raises serious questions about trust, reliability, and whether depending on U.S. defense systems still make sense in an era shaped by political pressure and uncertainty. And that's why this moment matters. It wouldn't just mean the U.S. losing a deal, it would signal a shift in confidence, a sign that even its strongest allies are starting to rethink how much they rely on American systems. And once that shift starts, it rarely stays limited to one country. What we're seeing isn't just a procurement debate. It's a turning point. Canada once operated on the belief that its closest ally would always remain stable and predictable. But that assumption has been shaken. Now, Mark Carney is moving differently, exploring alternatives, strengthening domestic capability, and making it clear that Canada's future won't be tied to decisions made elsewhere. Because in a world where alliances are uncertain, real strength comes from independence. And if Canada chooses Saab over the F-35, it won't just be selecting a jet, it will be choosing control over dependence and sending a message that could resonate far beyond its borders. Subscribe to Economy Insights for sharp analysis on global power shifts, Canadian strategy, and the decisions shaping what comes next.